right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Between Two Studs. My name is Alex Stud.
And I'm Ron Stud.
Ron, episode 2 of season 2. How you doing?
I'm doing great. Yourself?
I am doing fabulous. And tonight we have on the show as our first guest of season 2 and our first guest on this new video platform, Riverside, we have good friend Taylor Lacey. Taylor, how you doing tonight?
I'm doing great, guys. Thanks for having me. I'm really excited about this. And it's even better seeing you. So
it is. And I mean, shoot, last time I saw you, that was for Alex's wedding, right?
It was, yes. It was at Alex's wedding. That was the last time I saw you and your family.
And you did a great job as an officiant, I might add.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. It was really fun. I was honored to do it. Alex and Hannah being two of my closest friends. But yeah, no, last time I saw you was at the wedding. And then I saw Alex a few short weeks ago, right after Thanksgiving. Him and Hannah stayed with my wife and I for a night as they were traveling to and from Maine.
You know, it's nice to know when I'm going through New England, I got a place to stay. So
now, Taylor, I know that you've actually listened to our show, which is awesome. But as our show starts, there's always something we have to kick it off with, right? And I know you're prepared for that.
Yeah.
Do you want to tell us what that is?
Yeah, it's a shot of Malort.
Oh, heck yeah.
Oh, yeah. Here we go. Cheers, brothers.
Cheers. We'll wait for Taylor, and then when we're ready, we will go.
Oh, are you pouring it into a shot glass?
Oh, yeah, of course. This
He
one's
had like the little jigger. I wasn't sure if you were going to drink straight out of the little jigger or not.
No, I can't do that anymore.
Right.
Cheers, guys.
Cheers.
Taylor,
beautiful.
Do you remember the first time you had Malort?
Yeah, it was the night before my wedding. You brought it. So you brought it down to Florida, and we were with our group of friends, and you started passing the bottle around. And I had heard about Malort through Alex. Really, it was the only time I heard it. And every single person is like, it's the worst thing you've ever had. Okay, let's give it a shot. And he handed me the bottle and took a couple swigs, and I was like, this isn't bad. Like, I don't know what people are crying about. And it's funny, I actually enjoy it. It's not that bad. The kind of Malort that I hated, though, was at your bachelor party, Alex. You brought which I didn't even know they had, like, the double barrel-aged.
Oh, that's Malort. What I'm drinking right here, the barrel-aged.
Oh, my God. That was bad. For the listeners out there, get the regular Malort.
The regular Malort is
the single barrel aged. What's that?
The regular Malort is a couple dollars cheaper. So.
Oh wow, yeah. For me, it was better taste. Anyway, that is the first time I had Malort.
Oh.
Last episode, we actually were talking about that. I said the barrel aged Malort. I felt like tasted like somebody got a bottle at one point from somebody as a gift, and then they let it sit on their shelf for 5 or 6 years. It just doesn't taste quite as fresh. It wasn't bad, but it's definitely, there's something a little bit off about it.
Yeah, I don't know what it is, but I agree. The regular stuff, I'll take any day.
All right. So one of the things that we always start with our guests, as a continuation of season 1, is our infamous Ember Round. So Alex, if you wouldn't mind kicking us off.
Well, so you kind of alluded to it a little bit, but give us a little bit more. How do you know us? What's the story?
Yeah. So I met Alex in college. And so it's funny, Alex and I were in the Friars together, but that is not how I met Alex. Alex and I were part of an organization called the Residence Hall Association. It was essentially a group of people that lived in the dormitories who put on the socials and stuff. And we met cleaning, I think it was called Adopt a Block. We met
That's right.
Picking up trash outside of Rigtown in Westchester, Pennsylvania. And it was one of those relationships that I only talked to him when I saw him or maybe crossed paths through campus. It wasn't really until we got into the Friars that we got to know each other. And it's funny, and I'm sure we'll get to that in this conversation, but Alex ended up being my roommate in Boston for a number of years, where what's really cool is I've met a good amount of the Stud family through just being the roommate. And, Ron, you and Kate were the last of the Studs on my my list of people to meet, but I've met everyone else. So I'm so happy. It's crazy to think that a random trash pickup day, you meet someone that's so close to you and you become so close with everyone's, family through that. But I'm sure we'll get to the conversation there. But that is how I know you guys, is from a
Through
Duffel box.
trash. Through trash.
Yeah, through trash.
Yeah,
One man's trash is another man's treasure.
That's right. You're not the first person to say you know me through trash. So there you go.
Perfect reason to go out and do a lot of cleaning of trash, right?
Mm-hmm.
Never know who you'll meet. All right. So tell us a little bit about yourself, areas of interest, and what are you passionate about?
Yeah. So I'm Taylor, everyone. For those that don't know me, I live in Boston, Massachusetts, with my wife. It's funny, I'm kind of your just standard guy. I love golf.
You live in Medford, Massachusetts.
I live in Medford now, yes, which is just on the outskirts of Boston. And it's funny, people are always like, well, what's Medford? And I said, if you've ever watched a Boston movie and there's been a dead body pulled out of a river, that was filmed in Medford, Massachusetts. The Mystic River runs through Medford, which is notoriously known for where the Irish mob used to dump bodies. So I live right there. You were about to say something, Alex.
No, I was going to say the Winter Hill Gang was like that. That was like where they hung out, right?
Yeah, the Winter Hill is literally two stones thrown away from me. It's crazy.
Listen, I love where you live. Every time I visit, I think this is where I would hide a dead body.
Mm-hmm. It kind of gets to that vibe. It's nice. It's a good family-friendly community too, which we love. But I'm just kind of your standard dude. I love sports. I love golf. I play golf. I'm not good at it, but I enjoy being out there. I'm a huge, football, and I do enjoy baseball. It's one of those things. I started picking up reading a little bit more through the pandemic, which is something I've never really liked to do. I was telling Alex this. I used to love watching, I love watching television and movies and things, and I said I got to figure out a better way to capture like just the thought process of TV, and I was like, I just start reading more. But I read like James Patterson. These are the books you find in like the beach house that you go on vacation, and the people that own the house. It's in their bookshelf that you read. I
would have guessed you were like a Michael Crichton guy.
No. I mean, I've read, that's Jurassic Park, right? I've read Jurassic Park.
Yep.
Now it's I'm into the goofy crime. I don't know. It's weird. But yeah, other than that, guys, that's like what I'm loving right now. Is like just NFL Sundays, being able to sit back, relax.
Well, speaking of just relaxing, what are you currently drinking?
This is a Johnny Walker Double Black.
Oh, I love Double Black.
Mm-hmm. And one of your previous guests from season 1 bought me this bottle. Matt Toll, shout out, thank you.
Oh, there you go.
He bought me. Yeah.
Very nice.
What are you guys drinking?
Great question. So for me, I'm having Georgia Moonrise Distillery, and this is a nice bourbon. It's a single barrel, and this comes in at barrel proof, so it's 118 proof, so it's got a little bit of fire on it, and really, really tasty. I've got to say, it's got some, I was telling Alex before the show started, it's got some nice raisin kind of cinnamon notes on it.
Interesting.
It's really nice. And what are you drinking, Alex?
In honor of both of you being here tonight, both of you were at my bachelor party. I picked this up, Woodford Reserve Double Oaked. I picked this up when we were at the Woodford Reserve Distillery, and I remember asking our taster guide, said, "What's your favorite drink that Woodford Reserve makes?" And this is what he said. And I find it very delicious. I think because it's been aged in 2 separate barrel cycles, it's much smoother than like a traditional bourbon. So I really enjoy it. Yeah.
Very nice.
Yeah. So I know this is always a fan favorite, Taylor, and I'm sure you've thought about it before you got on the show. Give us a piece of art. And of course, that word art can mean a lot of different things, but that represents to you or speaks to you in some way. Tell us about it.
Yeah. So what the beauty of this video platform is our viewers, or your viewers, will get to see it.
Oh, yeah.
I have it here with me. So at first you're going to laugh, but I'm going to explain to you why it's important to me and represents me. So this is a wooden carved Santa Claus.
What?
And people are probably like, why do you have this? What is this? My grandfather, this was a hobby of his. He used to whittle.
Wait, the one who was an ump?
No, not that one. This is a different grandfather. And for some reason, he had just a happiness and a love toward Christmas, and so his passion with whittling was Santa Clauses. That was kind of like his theme, like his like that was like if you saw that somewhere, you're like, oh, that's probably my grandfather whittled that. Because he had hundreds of them, and the beauty of it is he used to just date them. And for the viewers that can't see that, that's December of '93. And when he died 6 years ago, my grandmother allowed me. Well, it sounds morbid, but she was able to. She was like, "You can take one. Like we have a bunch of them. Take one back." And I've had this now for a while. But it's one of those things. I was so close with my grandfather, and I used to love seeing his wood shop in the basement and all the little nifty things he would make. And for some reason, when I saw this one, it was kind of like when people pick out their dog. It's like, oh, like that one. I just felt the aurora, and I saw it, and I was like, I want this for my house. And I actually had it in our house in the last house we lived in, Alex, in Alston, when he died. So I was able to have this, and it's always been in some, whether it's a bedroom or I'm in kind of my office third room, but it's always next to me. So
let me ask you this, because is it in Harry Potter, which I'm not a Harry Potter guy, but they always say like the wand picked the magician or whatever.
Yeah, exactly like that. Yeah,
it picked you.
Yeah, I felt it. There was like a box of like a bunch of them, and I started sorting through them. And I don't know, this one I really loved.
Do you keep it out?
It's like a foot and a half.
Do you keep it out all year round, or is it just a Christmas thing?
No, it's actually, if I'm not going to move my camera, but I have a where I keep my cigars. My humidor. I have a nice globe, and then this guy sits right behind it next to the humidor.
I love that.
Yeah. So that's when I thought of this question and hearing other previous guests, I was like, this is something that it not necessarily represents me, but it's something that I like as a piece of art that I look at, and it means so much to me in a very, nostalgic / like family oriented way. I don't know. I love it.
This kind of leads to my next question. Because the next question, I think it ties into how COVID maybe has permanently changed your life, hopefully in a positive way, right? If there's something that we could take that's a betterment. I know you mentioned reading. Have you thought about getting into whittling?
No, I did not. It's funny. I did it in the Boy Scouts, and I nearly killed myself doing it. So me being around that type of stuff is not a good idea. My dad's a construction remodeler by trade, so that trait did not pass down to me, so I'm going to stay clear of that. It's funny though, when you think about the COVID and impacting you, I'll say this in a positive way. I'm actually one of the few that I feel like I haven't really been impacted in a certain way with COVID. I think there was an adjustment, but what I'm about to say, people are going to first think, well, yeah, a lot of people had to do this. But for someone like me, who's an extrovert, this was extremely difficult. So when I think about how COVID impacted me, is I love working from home now. I love it. And I hated the idea of it, even when, Alex, you moved away and you told me for 2 years while living in Austin, Texas, you worked from home. And I said, how could anyone possibly ever want to do that? And when we were forced to do it in March, it was the worst, 3 months of most extroverts' life. And I got to be honest with you guys, I absolutely love it now. I can kind of be in my own world and not get distractions. You can kind of do your own thing. I get to do things around the house throughout the day. It's like, oh, I have an hour to kill. Cool. I don't have to sit around my desk and pretend to work. I can go do something productive. And it took me about a year to sit down. And now the thought of going back to work, commuting, doing all that stuff, it's like, I don't want to do that anymore. I want to work from home. So it's interesting when I think about that question, how it's changed me. I think for good, I'm going to be, in a world where I majority of the time will work from home.
Do you think COVID has maybe made you less extroverted or maybe less reliant on communicating with other people?
No, I don't think so. Not in a work setting, at least. I mean, I shouldn't say that not in a work setting. I would say generally it hasn't. I will say, like, being through work meetings all day, it is like more difficult to take away work from your personal life or personal life from work. That was the hardest thing I struggled with. I think now, once a certain time hits, whether it's 6:30, computer goes down, and then I move into my personal life. And I feel like I've been really good at that. And, a lot of people struggle with that. But I got to be honest with you guys, that was the thing that really changed. I really hated working from home, like hated it. And now it's something I'm going to look for in employment.
So related to that, though, I think one of the things that I've heard that I thought was interesting is how this whole pandemic, for better or worse, has really pushed forward the whole idea of people can accomplish work, get it done, and working from home is maybe not as much of a people are sitting around doing nothing. I think was the stigma previously. It seems like it's very much changed that. So as an extrovert, would you kind of agree with that, or was it more just it was a matter of fact of my life changed and I had to adapt? Or do you feel it was more by having that experience and exposure, that's where you've kind of come to love it that way?
Yeah, it was through the exposure. It was not something that I was like ready to do. Whether it was virtual happy hours or connecting with coworkers like I would at the water cooler, air quotes. There's ways of working, and now it's like things organically happen because everyone's still doing it, and we find ways to get better at it. And it's just something that has clicked with me. It's, I think a lot of people have struggled with stop working or continue working or when to start working. And I think, as you mentioned, Ron, this has kind of changed the way that we think about working in general and being able to work not only from wherever you are and can work, but also in the hours that deem the most important, right? I mean, I think we're seeing the goodbye of the 9 to 5, right? If you want to work 8 to 4 or, 10 to midnight, go right ahead.
Yeah, I will say one of the things I still struggle with, Taylor, is I think pre-COVID, if someone sent me an instant message, whether it's Slack or Teams or whatever, at 8 o'clock at night, I think pre-COVID I would have said, they're going to see me in the morning. I don't have to prove to them that I'm working or not working. I'm not even going to worry about responding. I still, almost 2 years later, feel this pressure to say I need to respond, even if it's outside of that normal window of what is normally your hours of work. And I don't know why I have that pressure, because I think a lot of other people have let that go. But it's still on my mind. Like I've struggled to really identify when are these hours that I'm working, and if they're not within those hours and it's not urgent, right? It's not a fire that we have to put out or something like that. Like let it go. I struggle with that more so than I did before COVID.
A lot of people do. I mean, that's one of the big things with working from home. I think for me it was, and I struggled with that in the beginning too. But I think what I kind of came to Jesus moment was finding and creating a boundary in my professional life, right? Saying to myself, and not only to myself, but to my managerial staff and my team around me, hey, look, if it's this time, I'm probably not going to answer. And sticking to that, unless, you mentioned a fire drill. But I think a lot of people have that problem. I did too in the beginning. But I think that's where it comes. It's like now it's, because it's impacting my life to a degree of, it's changed the way that I've worked. From like before, it's like thinking about going in Monday through Friday, maybe get dinner with some coworkers after work. Like that whole like being in the office environment with other people has changed completely, and I'm completely okay with it at this point. We've been able to adapt well, and I don't know. That's just one thing that I think about, because as someone who thrives on that social, physical, it's been tough, but I don't know. We work around it, and I've gotten used to it, and I really enjoy it.
I know I need to get better at it. Like I was thinking about this last week. You're gonna laugh, but it was like 10 in the morning. I'm on the toilet, doing my normal thing. And I get, I'm playing my little game. I like to play little games on my phone. And all of a sudden I get a Teams message from my manager. And I'm like, instinctively, got to stop playing the game, and I got to message him back. And it was interesting because I as I was writing him back, I was thinking to myself, like, 3 years ago, I'm on the toilet at work in the office, and my manager messages me. I'd be like, I'll be out in 5 minutes, right? Like, I'm not going to respond right now.
Or ignore it, yeah.
But somehow, sitting on the toilet at my house, I feel like I got to respond right now.
I feel like that's been a general thing that we've all kind of experienced, because especially, I feel like in the office, there's clear boundaries, right? Where you're physically in the building. So when you walk out that building, like you said, unless it's anything major, it's out of sight, out of mind. And I think there is a certain level of guilt, like, well, I went to the bathroom, and yeah, and if you're in the office and you went to the bathroom, nobody cares because unless you're there for like 2 or 3 hours, nobody's going to really pester
Right.
you, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, if you go to the bathroom at home and it's like, all right, I'm taking 2, 3, 4 minutes and somebody's messaging you, you got to be like, oh, okay, I'll get back. I'll help you. 1 second. And that's such a weird feeling because I think that, yeah, in the office, totally different story. But at home, I'll be right there. I'm not away.
Yeah.
It's just weird.
It is. The convenience of it at home. It's weird. But that's where the boundaries come in. That
Right.
And you have to set boundaries.
you set them, right?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Like your boundary should be if you're taking a crap, don't message anyone. Unless it's me on
but then-
Google
Well, you
Hangout,
got to do,
then
you
can
know,
message.
on Teams, you can have little, same thing with Slack, right? You can have little, like, emojis.
So put the poop emoji
you
up.
should put the poop emoji up.
Smart.
Yeah.
Change your status. Yeah.
Yeah.
No one looks at.
It seems like a bit of an overshare, but
Might work.
I mean, yeah.
It's a biological
it would
function.
work.
No one should be
Fair.
ashamed of that.
Fair.
Hey, so congratulations. You passed the Ember round. Great job, Taylor.
Woo!
I know you were
Thank
having
you, guys.
doubts.
You wouldn't have
Wait,
done it without
wait.
you guys.
Wait a second. As part of our new platform, I think I got something just for that. I'll get better at this. We'll get better as things go. So, here we go. Here we go. Huh? I knew you could do it.
Well, you know,
Wow.
I think he was deserving of a golf clap. That was a little excessive.
Yeah. That hurt my ears.
We gotta tone it down. He didn't get that much of an applause yet.
Oh, wow.
There were some hollers in that one. I don't know if he
That
deserves
sounded like a Dave Chappelle Netflix special.
Hey, so you're past that. You were talking to us about working during COVID, obviously. Let's go backwards. Let's go back in time, circa 2012, circa 2013. You graduate college from Pennsylvania, and you immediately move to Massachusetts. Well, I remember you had this attraction to Massachusetts, like, since you were a child. Can you talk about what that attraction was?
Yeah. It's funny. I mean, Alex is totally right. Ever since like essentially high school, I'd always had this idea of moving away. And why I picked Massachusetts, I get this question a lot because most people think it was either school or work. Work's kind of the answer, but I got to choose, and I'll explain why. So, my grandfather, the Lacey name, he's originally from Rhode Island. So when he moved to the Pennsylvania area many years ago, he'd always talk about just being in New England and how part of my family's still up there. And it's funny, we did this family road trip where we did get to see part of the Lacey family and things like that. But we did a kind of a whole New England thing. We went to Vermont, New Hampshire, Maine, and we stopped in Boston. And I fell in love with the city. It was a city that I'd never really gotten to experience. Philadelphia was always, that's home. It's not a draw to me. New York's too big. DC, I didn't really care about. But there was something about Boston. It was mythical. It was like, hey, it's far away, but it's really not. And kind of talking through my family about it, it was something that they'd always kind of, said they'd support me in. And growing up a Red Sox fan because of my grandfather, he wrote in my baby book that I would be the starting second baseman for the Red Sox. As you can tell, well, you can't see me really, but as my friends would know, that didn't happen at all. And so I just had this like interest in Boston. So anyway, I had worked for a company through college called Penske, which is the yellow trucks. And anyway, they have locations across the entire country, and they had an opportunity for me to move to a Massachusetts location. It was essentially running the Rhode Island and Southern Massachusetts locations. And I said, this is an opportunity I can't say no to because I've always wanted to move away to New England, specifically Boston. Here's my ticket. Now, this was not in Boston. This was in Franklin, Massachusetts, which is named after Benjamin Franklin. It is, in 2013, the year I moved there, it was the safest town in America. It was voted, where I'm pretty sure there was the crime rate was negative. Like there was more people doing community service than there was actually like crime happening. So it was a very safe neighborhood, something that a 22-year-old really didn't want to be living in. But Alex got to see it. He came to
I
visit.
did get to see it,
Yeah.
I wouldn't think the 22-year-old single guy that would pick that town, but it worked out.
I did that for work. I had moved there for that specific location for work, but I had gotten my the foot in the door for living in Massachusetts and then at some point Boston. But really, it came down to loving the Red Sox, my family being from New England, and then the idea, guys, of like moving away. Like, don't get me wrong. Like, there's always a small place in my heart for Reading, Pennsylvania, Berks County, and all that type of. But like, the concept of saying, "Hey, I love you guys, my family and friends. I'm gonna go try something different."
Totally,
I did.
Totally. Hey, rapid fire. I'm just gonna hit you with it. You give me your first initial gut check, right? Here we go.
Geez.
Here we go. Best thing about Massachusetts.
Clam chowder.
Worst thing about Massachusetts.
The drivers.
Yeah, mass holes. I remember that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Do you actually like all these Boston movies, or is it way over the top? And I'm talking The Departed, Mystic River, all those movies.
Yeah, they're a little over the top. Especially those movies are classics. I do agree. When you start getting the Mark Wahlbergs, who's a police officer, they're a little over the top. I think The Town's a great movie. But what's the Jeff Miller's going to kill me on this one. The Dead Poet Society. Isn't that another Boston movie?
No.
Is that a Boston movie? No.
No.
What is that?
No, that was filmed. Funny
thinking-
enough, that was filmed in Middletown, Delaware. You're thinking
Goodwill Hunting.
Good Will Hunting.
Yeah.
That's not as you can tell, it's not one of my favorites. But
It's Ben Affleck in it, right?
They're a little, the accents. It's funny, the accents are always over the top because Boston, and Alex, from living here, it's a melting pot, right? Now, maybe when those movies took place, the South Boston, that's very that's that thick accent, but a lot of those people don't live there anymore. So current day, the accent's not really prevalent unless you're in the suburbs of Massachusetts. So I always think that those movies are a little over the top with their kind of actor portrayal, but when they get into like the unfortunate of like the Italian and Irish mobs, I mean, those were real, people and events that did occur in Boston's history. So as much as they sound over the top, they're true.
Yeah.
So,
and
it's not. I'm not going to sit down and go, I need to watch this specific Boston movie. If it's on TV, sure. I'm not going to be picking it out of a lineup of movies.
Fair. And last question on the rapid fire: what do you miss the most about being in the Mid-Atlantic? And I mean, Pennsylvania, New Jersey, Delaware, that whole area.
I mean, obviously, my family and friends. That's
not that. Something else. Is it Wawa?
Yeah, it's Wawa. Yeah, it's Wawa. It's Wawa. I mean, listen, I can't say I'm Team Wawa all the way. I think Sheetz does have pretty good food, but Wawa's kind of experience, I feel like they really kind of spearheaded that, like, made to order, like, but it kind of building out. I was just actually telling a coworker who had never heard of Wawa the kind of history of it, kind of going through it. But it's funny, I actually told my manager this like 2 weeks ago, and every manager that I've ever worked for knows this. I make it very known that if Wawa were to ever expand to New England, I will be quitting my job and being a part of that. And I've reached out to Wawa recruiters on LinkedIn, and if any of them are listeners of this podcast, please expand to New England. I've reached out. There is a market. There is nothing up here like it, and it would do so well. I think the business model is perfect. Yeah.
I can just see it. Massachusetts finally gets Hoagie Fest. That'd be a match made in heaven, right?
Yeah. And
I
people
love
up
Hoagie
here,
Fest.
me too. And people up here are like, oh, it's just a gas station. Wrong.
No.
Because here's the thing. And Alex and I could see what you're getting at. Alex and I have talked about this before. You have to understand the type of demographic that Wawa is. It is not a, hey, honey, I just got home from work. We have to go get dinner for our 4 children. It is not that type of demographic. It is the doing a long drive. It is I stopped and got gas and it's lunchtime. Or, hey, I work near a Wawa. I have 20 minutes. Let me run and get a sandwich. It's the quick, the easy. It's not made to be there to sit down and eat. And once you grasp that, wow, it's the greatest place on earth.
I'm just waiting for a clam chowder hoagie. That's really what I want. I'm envisioning just like New England chowder on top of a hoagie.
Or you could do the mystery meat from McDonald's and get the lobster roll. Ugh.
Ugh.
It's like $9.99.
Ugh.
Ugh.
That is, yeah. All right. So you mentioned Penske.
Mm-hmm.
Tell us now, having gone right from college to working for Penske, what was that like?
It was actually pretty easy, just because I just to give you the history of my relationship with Penske. I had interned there and worked there throughout college. Penske, for those of the listeners, I kind of mentioned this earlier. They're the big yellow trucks that you use for moving. They're actually headquartered in Reading, Pennsylvania. So they're kind of all the corporate entities of Penske are in Reading, Pennsylvania, which is just it like makes up like 5% of the employment of the Reading, Pennsylvania population. That's how big it is. And anyway, I had interned there. I had done a number of roles through college, and I had always honestly thought of myself as staying and becoming the next president of the company. Like I had just in college, I had this thought that I'm going to be with this company for the rest of my life. I loved it. I truly was passionate.
So after like you realized you're not going to be a Major League Baseball player, this was like your number two.
President of Penske. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I know it sounds goofy, but when you're in college and you're so passionate about a brand, I had T-shirts. I have a toy truck right over here.
I remember.
I have Penske attire that I care about. And I think taking a full-time job in their kind of their field program, and for those that don't know, just to kind of wisp over it quickly, in order to move up in the corporate ladder in Reading, Pennsylvania at Penske, you have to move away and go work at their field. It's very common to what the car rental companies do with their locations. So anyway,
I refer to this as the Rumspringer of Penske. You have to go out into the community.
You got to go away, in order to come back. Right. Yeah, you got to experience something different. Little taste.
Very Pennsylvania.
Taste of heaven. Yeah. So I did that, and it was awful. Now, for anyone that might be a Penske public relation person on this, or I don't hate the company at all. There's a certain level of that is how the industry works, and you adapt to it type of thing, and it wasn't for me.
You didn't like dealing with the snow and shoveling out trucks at 3:30 in the morning?
No, I didn't. Yeah, that was the thing, is my shift started at 6 a.m. So I had to wake up at 4 in order to be at the location at 6 just to open up. And being in New England, it snows from January to April every day, so you have to shovel. That's like the entry level job. So it was, Ron, to answer your question, it was easy to transition because I knew the product, I knew the brand well, but what I was going into, I wasn't aware of, which was the trying to be a good customer service person to truckers, to small business owners and things like that in the logistics field. I mean, this is an industry that they needed everything yesterday, and if you don't deliver, no pun intended, you ruin their shipment, which ruins their business, which then hurts their monthly. There's a huge ripple effect. But the beauty about trucking is everything gets transported on a truck at some point. So it's an industry that's not really going to go away anytime soon, except for maybe the vaccine mandate where they might lay off 10 million drivers. But other than that, it might still be.
Wow. Yeah. But I mean, especially true with what's been going on with the pandemic. We've seen so many supply chain issues that have been purely dependent. I know that when I say in like San Diego, that's been one of the big things where with that port specifically, like I think for a lot of truck drivers, they've actually said for the off-peak hours, we're going to waive some of the fees that normally you have to pay, and then they're going 24/7. So they're doing everything that they can. But there's just a lot going on, especially that I think the pandemic has brought to light.
Mm-hmm.
Question for you, though. So for commercial truckers renting from Penske, what are the truckers like? And like, do they hold up to the stereotypes that you would think of or way off? And then did you pick up on some of that culture yourself?
Yeah, they're pretty close. Now, there's two different types of commercial truck drivers. There are the guys that drive the traditional tractor trailers, right? The big tandem axle 53-foot trailers. Those are typically your stereotype of a truck driver. The other guys, which I think from a cultural perspective, they're a little bit worse to deal with. These are the guys that drive the trucks that we can all legally drive, but they think that they're professional or they're commercial grade, right? So when I say that there's a CDL license that you have to take, which allows you to pull a certain payload, right? How much weight is in the truck? Those guys are what I consider to be that's the truck drivers, like the tractor trailers. The other guys who like me, you, and Alex can rent, who work for Joe's mechanic shop. Right? Those are the guys that are tough to deal with because they're not at the level of someone at the CDL level. But they're like, in terms of like their personality, they're like rough around the edges. They don't care about what happened to you, why the truck might not be ready. They're just, again, they needed it yesterday. The regular truck drivers are chill because they're like, give me my truck and I'm going to drive for 12 hours and listen to music. And they're pretty easy to deal with. And so they sleep in it usually too. So.
Yeah. Question about truck culture movies, right?
Yes.
Have you ever seen Over the Top?
No, I have not, and I'm actually going to write that down right now. Over the Top, I have not. Tell me about it.
The movie title doesn't over-deliver.
Tell me about it.
It's a Stallone film from the 80s, and he's a truck driver, and he gets into an arm wrestling competition, and it's got all of the great 80s kind of montage music.
Oh, love it.
Arm wrestling. Great movie to check out. So
I love that. Well, I will say it's funny. The one truck culture that gets misconstrued is the attire. You would think that they're kind of like the bigger motorcycle, like they got like the jeans, the leather jacket, the hat, the trucker hat. They look and I'm not. I shouldn't say this because it's mean. I'm being it more to be facetious. Most of them look like Homer Simpson, right? They like got the grease stains on their shirts. They walk in to the truck place like, hey, I need my truck. All nice guys.
Right.
But they don't fit the cultural stereotype of what we see as a truck driver. And very rarely you see a woman.
Yeah. Yeah.
Very rare.
Yeah.
I've seen them, but it's 1%.
Now, last question on Penske, because Penske's an interesting business because they sell commercial, but then, like, I know when I moved to Boston, you hooked me up with a deal, and I took a Penske truck. I forget if it was a 24-footer or a 16-footer, but it was a 16. It was 16. Okay, and I
would have died on a 24. Yeah,
I almost died on a 16-footer. So
you would have died on a 24. Yeah.
Yeah. So
those are trucks.
Yeah. So I drove the 16-footer up to Boston, and I'm curious. Maybe you can explain to a listener who might be looking to move in the next couple of months, Penske versus UHaul. I think it's very confusing. I think people always see the 1999 deals with UHaul. Like, what's your take if someone were to ask you honestly, now that you're not affiliated with Penske at all, like you have no financial benefit for, just be honest. What's your take?
Yeah, so there's a couple things. So there's my understanding of the industry for anyone looking to move, and then there's like why pick one over the other. So first off, U-Haul has the brand name, right? It's kind of like a Kleenex, right? Oh, I'm going to ride a U-Haul, right? Everyone knows what a U-Haul truck is. It is just kind of embedded into our society. When it comes down to you need to move, at the end of the day, go down to price, right? They're both normal gasoline trucks that's going to fit your stuff to get it to point A to point B. Now, most trucking companies, so if you can avoid this, do it. It's hard to do if you're in a lease or you're selling your house, but if you can avoid the end of the month to move, do it at all costs because truck prices double, sometimes triple at the end of the month. Also, the truck pricing is strictly on supply and demand of where the truck is, where it's going, and what the trucks look like there. So I'll give you an example. Everyone used to get all up in arms because everyone in New England would move to the south, right? So there was a ton of trucks that would move from New England and be stuck in Florida, Georgia, Alabama, right? And all of a sudden, the South has a surplus of vehicles that they can't move. So they would price the trucks cheap. If you were moving from, say, Florida to Massachusetts, it would be like $300, unlimited miles. That's dirt cheap because they need the truck to go from Florida to Massachusetts without paying someone to do it. So they're going to have a customer pay for it. Whereas if you move from Massachusetts to Florida, it's like $1,000, right? So people sometimes, it does matter where you're going. Now, you can't affect that. Sometimes, obviously, the time of year will change. But if you can avoid the end of the month, that's a big one. Now,
and move to remote locations.
Yeah, move to move somewhere in the middle of nowhere.
I bet it's really cheap to move to Detroit.
It actually is. Detroit was the cheapest city to move to when I was working there. Now this is almost 10 years ago, but the thing is that you have to remember, and we try to do this while working there. Moving is like the third highest stress level of a human being's life. Right? It's like number one is like a death in the family. Number two is like a job, like unemployment, and then there's like moving. So when you're dealing with someone that works at a trucking company, they're aware that you're going through something super stressful. So be kind to your trucking, rental managers that you're dealing with, because a lot of times they can't help what happens. And that's the next thing is for anyone that's looking to move, and I hate to scare you, your reservation is never guaranteed. Never, never, ever. It doesn't matter what company you go with.
This is the Seinfeld. You're really good at taking the reservation. You just can't keep the reservation.
Yep, that's exactly what it is. Exactly what it is. Because what will happen is, and sometimes it's completely out of the fault of the location. A truck breaks down, they have to take another one, right? There's an obligation that happened, or someone didn't move a truck quick enough, or a customer didn't drop a truck off when they said they were going to drop it off. There are a number of variables that go on, but just know that the morning of your reservation, there's like a 30% chance that location's going to call you and say, hey, Ron, instead of picking up in, let's say, the southern Atlanta location, you got to go to Alpharetta, and we're going to give it to you for free. It might happen.
Not so bad.
Might happen.
That's not so bad.
So just know that. But yeah, but then when it comes down to like the trucks, they're all pretty much the same, except the sizes, right? So at a U-Haul, when you get a 16-footer, they actually include they call it, I think it's called the grandma's attic or the widow's attic.
Mom's attic.
The mom's attic. It's the thing that goes over the cab that you can only fit like 5 to 6 boxes on. They include that in the length. So the truck's actually, say, 14 feet, and then there's 2 feet above the cab.
Oh, those.
Where like a Penske, or like a Penske or like a Budget, they don't do that. So the bed's actually the size that they tell you.
So if you're right
sneaky.
on that, if you're right on that cusp, that extra 2 feet can be pretty significant.
Yeah, it matters. Yeah, especially if you're trying to a couch or a bed, bed frame in. Yeah. And then the other misconception is, and this is a safety thing, if you rent one of those smaller trucks, and they call them bucket seats, right? When you sit in, there's like the 2 large seats, and then there's usually a huge plastic centerpiece that's in the middle of the truck that you can put your coffee or whatever you want on there. There's a reason that's there. It's because the engine sits under that plastic thing. And there's a reason why there isn't a seat in the middle. So if you rent from, I think U-Haul does this, at least they used to do this. They used to put a bench seat in those types of trucks. And we used to tell people, if you sit in the middle and you get into an accident, that person in the middle is probably going to get the motor shoved into them.
Oh my God.
It's going to slam up into you. So when you're in like a Penske, and I think Budget as well, it's just 2 bucket seats. And don't ever put anything or anyone in the middle. Because if in the off chance you get in an accident, that's going to get completely destroyed and killed. So
wow.
Moving 101.
All right. Well, with that note, we're going to go to break. But that's really interesting. Thank you for the insight. We're going to go to break. When we come back, we're going to do a little bit of more quick fire. I want to talk about music. I want to talk about baseball. I want to talk about video games. And we'll wrap things up. So we'll be right back.
Hey everyone, Ron here, and I want to take a quick moment to thank you for being a listener. But one thing I'd ask, if you're able to do so, we'd greatly appreciate it if you could give us a review of our podcast, subscribe to our YouTube channel, or join our Discord server. We'd greatly appreciate it. And we'll be posting a link to our Discord server in today's episode. Thank you so much.
And we're back with Between Two Studs, here with Taylor Lacey. Taylor, I understand you're a big music guy. What's the best concert you've ever been to?
Journey.
Oh yeah.
Journey. I saw Journey in 2015 maybe. And first of all, the experience was in itself insane. But when I think about a good concert, they shredded. They played music that was just absolutely incredible. And when you think about like when you play live, a lot of bands are really good at playing studio. Journey knew how to play live music and play it well. And they played to the crowd, right? It was all old people. And then it was me, Kyle Forsyth, and Stephen James, who Alex knows well. And man, out of every concert I've ever been to, Journey was the best. They just knew how to shred.
Was that the show where it started like an hour late?
Yeah, they were late. So Steve Miller Band actually opened up for them, which was also a great opener, but Journey was way better. And after Steve Miller Band played, about like an hour went by, and one of the members of Journey came out and was like, "Hey, everyone, we're really sorry. Our bassist got stuck at LaGuardia." Now, again, this was in southern Massachusetts. LaGuardia is like a 3.5-hour drive. Ooh. And everyone's like, "What the heck? Like, how do you plan that? Like, that's so bad." And like, anyway, it was like an 1.5-hour wait, and then the guys showed up and they played their set. But the set didn't end till like 2 a.m. because they didn't get on till like 11:30 midnight.
Wow.
But anyway, that was insane.
Weird side note.
That's what made the experience better, but the music was incredible.
Weird side note with Journey. That's actually my daughter's favorite band.
Is it?
Yeah. She really loves Journey.
Well, and it was, and I forget the names, and you guys might correct me, but the old lead singer, who's no longer their lead singer, this was with the new guy who, he's like, is he Filipino? Or I think he's from the Philippines. And the only reason Journey found out about him was through like a YouTube video. He was singing one of their songs at like a karaoke night, and they were looking for a new lead singer. And they're like, "That's the guy." And they flew out to the Philippines and auditioned, and he's now their lead singer, and he's incredible.
That's amazing.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you could literally close your eyes, and it was, I forget what the original
Wasn't it Steve Perry?
You know, Sorry Journey, I forget. Steve Perry. Yeah, you could close your eyes.
The only reason
and you would be hearing Steve Perry.
The only reason I know Steve Perry is because of the movie Basketball. Hey, no more Journey psychouts.
Oh. Steve Perry.
That's fair.
So
that's fair. Anyway, that's out of all the music I've seen, Journey.
So who's on the bucket list? Like, let's just say COVID's over tomorrow. Next summer, everyone is playing. Everyone is doing their farewell tour. Who are you seeing?
So there's two. And I break it up into actual music and then the tailgate. The music is the boss, Bruce Springsteen. I do want to see him before he dies. The tailgate is I want to go to a Jimmy Buffett concert.
Oh my God, I want to do both of those. Can we? Why don't we tag team those together?
We can play. Let's do it. Yeah, let's do it.
I will fly out to Boston
on that too.
I'll fly out to Boston for one of the shows. You come out to Chicago for another one. We'll do
deal.
And do you remember we were 4 or 5 feet away from the boss? Do you remember that?
Bruce in Harvard, Harvard Square with Matt and Leah, Matt Toll and Leah Toll.
He was doing a book signing, and we had
at the Coop.
Yeah, and we were waiting to go in to have dinner at my favorite restaurant. I guess it was lunch actually, Border Cafe. And all of a sudden, like, cops show up and they're like blocking the street off, and we're like, "What are we doing? What's going on here?" And all of a sudden, the boss is in a car and he's like waving. We're like, "What is going on here?" He was doing a book signing. Yeah.
For what his memoir.
That's awesome. So, getting back a little bit to being in Boston, right? And you're being a future second baseman, right, for the Red Sox. Alex has told me that you absolutely love the Red Sox, and that love has completely demolished any other sports fandom, right? Tell us about that and a little bit about how that all happened.
Yeah. So growing up, as I said, my grandfather's from Rhode Island. I grew up a Red Sox fan, even before the years they won their first World Series. And I remember the crazy thing is that was before the era of really the full internet, where I would watch ESPN the next day to find out what the final score was. Because one, I was living in Reading, Pennsylvania, I didn't get to see the games.
Mm-hmm.
So every morning I had to wake up to see the scores. And I was so passionate about watching them, or trying to if I could, that when they went to the World Series, my mom actually let me stay up every night to watch all the games, because it was like the first time that they were at that stage, at that level. And from that moment on, it was the most breathtaking team I've ever watched. Whenever I saw that blue and red B, I was like, my heart pounded. It was such a weird experience. And even, Ron, when we were in college, when I started getting more good with the internet, I would stream their games on my laptop.
Mm-hmm.
Like spring training, I would watch their games, and I got like excitement out of it. And even for moving up here, I had gone to a bunch of games, a bunch with Alex. And I have to be honest with you, ever since really what broke the camel's back was trading Mookie Betts. But I think the sport in itself has done a poor job of maintaining fans. I think there's a group of traditional baseball fans who really care about that old 100-year baseball history, which is fair. But as someone who's played it, loved it, and I love the evolution of sports and technology in that, baseball's done a good job of that. And I think I started getting a lot more disinterested because of the environment, right? It's gotten to a point where they were losing fans, they were losing viewers. It wasn't as an exciting of an event as it used to be. And then add on that a lot of other sports have done a great job, like NFL.
Mm-hmm.
The NFL's done an incredible job of maintaining not only their current population, but trying to get new people too, right? You look at the Nickelodeon, like they're getting the Nickelodeon partnership. They're getting young kids to watch football in a fun way.
The other
baseball
thing,
can't do that.
The other thing that the NFL has done that I think is really impressive is, and I didn't think about this until one of our mutual friends, Shayna Mason, was visiting, and she was talking about how she really doesn't care a whole lot about the game itself, but she wants to know the personal stories of these players. And if you watch an NFL game today, they really do a good job of tying in where they grew up and their family and charities that they support. And all of a sudden, they've really gotten into a whole new demographic, which in many cases is women.
Yeah.
It's really interesting. Sure. I do want to ask you, because I know your fandom for baseball has diminished every year the last couple of years. And I know a lot of people who are our age demographic who the MLB is dependent on for survival. Right? They're depending on our generation to be the new breadwinners who are buying season tickets, who are going to games, who are buying merchandise, and we're not. What can baseball do to win that group back? Or is it too late?
Yeah. I think it is a little too late for certain people. I will say, living in Boston, it's a certain thing where people only go for the history and the team, right? I mean, when you're going to Fenway, you're going into, the mecca of baseball. But when you go there as a fan of just the sport, right? Yeah, I get to see Fenway. Beer is $13. You get a Dixie cup, right? A burger is $8.50, right? Tickets are through the roof, right? The ownership of the Red Sox do such a poor job of saying, listen, we know we're a historic team. Come and enjoy it with us. Rather, they take advantage, and they're the capitalistic piece of, let's get as much money as we can because we have that history. And I think if teams start looking at the overall experience, like the NFL's done a pretty good job of this, right? Whether it's tailgating or pre and post games, a lot of teams have sponsored certain things for fans to be there and to enjoy the community rather than just the sport or the player. Baseball's been able to do that, and I don't know what they do because it's a 160 some games a year. The average 16-year-old is willing to wait a week to go to a football game, but you can't get them to go to more than 2 baseball games in a week because they're 3 hours and 40 something minutes long. Same time as a football game, but it only happens once a week. I don't know what they do. They got to shorten the length of the game. They got to shorten the season.
Oh my God!
They have to.
To me, that's the number one. 162 games a year is too many.
It's so much.
Well, and I feel like I was going to hit on that because I think as even a casual person who's maybe not that interested, 162 games is such a huge amount of games, right? How many teams in baseball start off the season absolutely atrocious, right? And then they can somehow pull off a World Series victory at the end. And it's like, how do you even maintain that? Like, I feel like in the NFL, at least you can kind of be like, okay, they're winning on a 10-game winning streak. Boom, they're solid.
Right.
Well, Taylor has always said it in baseball, probably more than any other sport. The best team rarely wins. Right? It's all about who gets hot in August.
You play average baseball from March to like July, right? You're average.
Yep.
And then you get through the dog days of summer, and then you start getting hot in like August, right? I mean, look at the Red Sox this year. They were awful up until, I don't know, May, and then they started getting pretty good. And then they were a young team and made it. But like, you look at some of these World Series winners, and they're not the team that is the best team in the beginning of the season or the number one ranked team going into the preseason. Where in football, because you only have a shortened season, and in the playoffs, it's a one-game elimination. That's exciting, right? As a fan, I'm not talking about as someone who's playing or an owner. As a fan, that's exciting, and you're willing to spend money to go travel and do that. Whereas Alex, he's going to go to a baseball game because he's in a new city, because he's traveling either to see a friend or a work event. He's not going to watch the game.
Mm-hmm.
That is,
you know what I mean?
Totally
so it's
true.
like, how do you capture? I don't know how you do it.
The one thing I will say that baseball has is it is the best sport in person. I believe that. The problem is it is not the best sport on television. The NFL has that by a long shot.
Right.
And in fact, I'd rather watch the NBA. I'd rather watch NHL. I'd pretty much rather watch any sport above baseball on television. And now more and more ad revenue from television is more so than what they're getting from actual admissions, right? So I'm not going to watch a baseball game, let alone 162 on television.
Right.
It's just not going to happen.
Exactly.
So
right. And unless you change the actual game, like, I mean, they've talked about making, because like when you think about baseball, you have it's the same theory or the same argument of like the defense wins a championship, right? It's boring, right? It's hard fought, boring football. The average fan loves a huge scoring, tons of touchdowns and tons of cool celebrations. Baseball's the same way, right? The traditional baseball player loves the rubber match, right? The pitchers dueling each other. There's no hits. There's no home runs. Well, you gotta get to the average baseball fan, right? Maybe make that pitcher's mound 6 feet further back or lower so they're not throwing as hard. I mean, the strike zone, I think I read an article that there were more strikes this year than in the last like 5 years, right? So like you're striking guys more out like than ever before. And because of that, there's no hits. There's no home runs. There's no action. And I think that's what players and fans want, is they want more action.
Yeah. Pitchers have gotten too good.
There's action. Anyway, that's how I think you fix it.
No, I honestly, pitchers are too good.
They really have.
Yeah. So I think we're all in agreement.
More action.
We're all in agreement. I think football is the king sport now. So Taylor, I know you're a Miami Dolphins fan. You are our second Miami Dolphins fan on the program. Call it now, objectively.
Ruben.
Objectively. Leave the Dolphins on the sidelines for a moment. Who are you calling to win the Super Bowl?
That's fair. Well, the Dolphins aren't winning the Super Bowl, so don't worry about that.
Who's winning?
I hate it. I think the Buccaneers are going to win again. I really do. I hate it. Listen. I want like the Cardinals to win.
Right. I'm with you there.
That's a fun. They're not going to. The Buccaneers are just too good, and I hate it. I effing hate it. But if I had to put money on it, gun to my head, the Buccaneers are going to win it again. They're too good.
Speaking of Dolphins, I liked it the other day. I stepped outside. There was an Amazon person delivering, and they saw my Bills stuff up, and they're like, "Oh man, you're a Bills fan. We can't be friends because I'm a Dolphins fan." I'm like, "It's all right. I like Dolphins fans. You guys are cool. Tua will eventually get things locked down, and you guys will be really good. As long as we can just get the Pats to take a shit for the next 10 years, I'm all cool with that." Right?
Oh, I'm not. Yeah. Listen, Belichick's too good. Mac Jones is overrated. Listen, I hate the Patriots more than anyone, but people have to realize the Patriots had 9 starters sit out because of COVID last year. They still are a good team.
Yeah.
Because of Belichick, right? They still have players that are good. But yeah, I mean, listen, I know the Bills have had I've talked to Alex about this. Bills have had a tough couple games. They're still going to make the playoffs. They're still the team. They're still a hard team to beat. Listen, they will be.
It's still a little bit crazy, but I hope so. I certainly hope so.
Well, I hope that the Josh Allen injury isn't as bad as they say it is.
They announced today, and of course this is going to be airing way after the fact, but it was it was just a sprain. He said they said day to day. They said he should be.
So he'll be good.
He should be good to go.
He'll be fine.
Yeah. So hey, let's switch topics. Let's get into video games. I know you're a gamer. What is the best video game of all time? And why is it Red Dead Redemption 2?
No reasons. It is. Oh man. No, it's just the cinematography. No, I do. The cinematography of it is next level. I think Rockstar did such an incredible job creating a masterpiece. I mean, I think in Red Dead Redemption, the original game, that they did a good job of storyboarding kind of the characters, but in RDR2, I mean, Arthur Morgan is the greatest video game character of all time, right? I mean, you passionately follow him and love him, at least in my experience, more than I've ever had any other video game character. And because of the graphics were so incredible, they brought it to life. And I think I read this article recently, and I don't know if this is true for other video games, so you guys correct me, but Rockstar, specifically for RDR2, they brought in 250 individuals to play the NPCs. So when you interact with a character that's not one of the main characters, that's an individual person that they brought in, not one of 10.
Yeah.
Like that, EA does with Madden, right? It's just like, a generic white or black dude. They brought in 250 individual people to play specific characters. And it's like, they went the mile to make a game so unique. That's one reason why. I mean, that's just in itself. And they just a great character development.
Well, it was just funny.
Admittedly,
go ahead, Ron.
Admittedly, like I've probably played about halfway through it, right? I need to get to the end of it, but that's kind of my problem with Rockstar Games is like there's so much in their very expansive worlds, and I feel like a kid with ADHD. I see something on the map and it's like, ooh, shiny, and I go off on like some completely side quest. But it's such a well-built world. One of the things that I specifically really love about that game is, and you already called it out, is the voice acting, right? Arthur Morgan's voice acting in there. I feel like for a lot of video games, it's really tough to get actors to maybe take it as seriously as he did. And you can feel the full gravity on things. Even within the first 15, 20 minutes of the game when you're up in the woods and it's like, we don't know if we're going to be able to get out of this winter blizzard right here.
Yeah.
We're going to see what's going to happen. And then to kind of also scoot ahead a few years and it's like, okay, we're trying to get things established, but it's like you kind of have a very down-to-earth, very folksy, and yet very authentic feeling to it. Even I didn't quite really necessarily think that this would be an interesting thing, but even the detail that goes into the horses, like the different breeds of horses that you have, will make a big difference in like their speed, how much they can carry, and even their personality of the horses is definitely different. Those are all huge factors.
They did. I mean, you think about, so for the listeners that have never played this game, it takes place in the Wild West. It's like the late 1800s. And you can go hunting and fishing. And there's different parts. They take on different parts of the country. And one of the parts is, at that time, New Orleans. They call it Saint Denis in the game. But it's a city, so everything's polluted. And if you go fishing there and catch a fish, it's actually a polluted fish. Like, it'll tell you that it's toxic or, it has some sort of pollution.
I didn't know that. I've never gone fishing in Saint Denis.
Yeah, that's how detailed the game is. But Ron, you bring up a group. I think his name's Roger Clark. I think is the voice actor. He won an award. I think he won the best voice actor that year because of his portrayal of Arthur Morgan. I mean, as I said, it's cinematic, right? It's you're playing a movie.
Well, I think that's exactly the right way of looking at it. And I remember seeing a documentary about like the evolution of video games recently, and that was one of the things they talked about. I think for a long time, video games were not seen as a serious piece of literature, right? And now you have video games that have budgets that exceed the biggest of blockbusters. I mean, there are video games now that cost $100 or $200 million, right? And so what they're putting into these games, the amount of time and effort, and the writers that they're hiring, the voice actors that they're utilizing are top notch. I mean, they're not just finding someone off the street. These are pros.
Yeah, just adding to that point too. Like one of the big things I was really pleased with the way Rockstar handled it is like a lot of the random encounters that happen in the game. There's all these different things that can happen, and it's like I feel like maybe an evolution of video games has been that 20 years ago. You see a damsel in distress. Okay, well that's she's clearly good. Whereas in Rockstar, it's like you don't know what you're going to be getting into. That damsel in distress, nope, she's actually going to try to kill you. That will happen, and I feel like that's kind of one of those cool things.
I was playing the other day, and I tried to help someone out, and I got robbed $300.
Right?
You obviously you usually killed him, right?
No, they literally they punched me in the face. I blacked out, and I woke up, and I lost $300. I was like, okay,
Wild West.
That's the Wild West right there,
baby. I can't
baby.
even retaliate. I can't even go find them.
That's the game. I mean, the beauty of it is there's so many stories. There's a whole, if anyone's fans of Reddit, there's actually a Reddit subreddit that is about Red Dead Redemption 2 conspiracy theories. Things that people have found, whether it's Easter eggs or stories that never made sense, and people have created wild conspiracy theories. That's how depth the game goes, and that's one of the reasons why I love it. Right? It's just the imaginary kind of aspect of it is just none. There's nothing else like it. So
I think Cyberpunk tried, but Cyberpunk wasn't even close in terms of the way that Rockstar just published an awesome game, and I think that there's a lot of hope that CD Projekt Red would do that with Cyberpunk, but I think it just calls to light how much better certain games like that are done that really do stand out.
Well,
so true.
It's funny because I remember a couple months ago, I think Taylor was finishing up Red Dead 2, and I said, "Oh, what are you going to do now? Like, you going to play a new game?" He goes, "No, I'm going to restart Red Dead Redemption 2. I'm going to restart it." So that's when you love the game.
Second playthrough. Yeah, second playthrough.
Yeah.
And I never do that. I only do the Rockstar. Anyway, let's continue.
All right. So you took the plunge and got married back in May. Tell us about that.
I did. Yeah, it was exciting and stressful at the same time. Obviously, I married my best friend. She's incredible. But I think the stresses of, and I know Alex knows this, the stresses of planning and executing a wedding and during COVID was awful. Long story short is I had actually the weekend that the country shut down was actually the weekend I was supposed to propose to her. It was like March 18th of 2020, and that got thrown out the window. So we started on a great foot. And I had to essentially got to plan G in my proposal. But anyway, we made it to our wedding day, and fortunately and unfortunately, we picked a state, which was Florida, and the only way we could move our wedding without a fee was if we could, if COVID shut down the state. And we picked Florida, which the governor chose never to shut down that state. So the wedding was going to happen no matter what, whether or not it was me and Alicia or our friends and family. And luckily, everything worked out where our friends and family came. Obviously, the vaccine came out pretty quickly, so everyone felt very comfortable, and it went out without a hitch. So I think all the stresses that led up to it, it was well worth it once we were there. But that was anyone going through a COVID wedding knows that experience, whether you had to reschedule or not. And I think the stresses definitely were made worth it.
Well, congratulations. And
thank you.
And just to add on to that then too, not only did you get your wedding done, but you also then officiated Alex's wedding. What was that like?
It was awesome. And just for the listeners, I mentioned how Alex and I met picking up trash. Alex was my best man at my wedding. So like, you never know who, as we mentioned, you never know who you're going to meet picking up trash. And yes, I did get to officiate, his wedding as well. And I was so honored, Ron, because, I think when I looked back on, Hannah and Alex's relationship, it was so cool being kind of at the very beginning, kind of being the first person to meet Hannah. Obviously, it was an advantage, right? I was Alex's roommate in Boston where really no one else lived. So I got to know her pretty well outside of all the friends. So I feel like out of everyone, I really had a good understanding of who they were as a couple. And I was honored when they asked me to do it because I just felt like I could incorporate kind of my perspective on their relationship in front of all the people that they called their family and friends and their most loved ones. So it was actually very easy to do because of that perspective I had.
Well, and one last question from me, and then I'll cut it over to you, Alex. Is it true that there was a Crown Royal bag that delivered the wedding ring?
Yes, that is true.
Okay.
That's all I'll say, but it is true.
Yeah. So I appreciate the kind words, and it is true. It's interesting when I look back when Hannah and I first started dating. Taylor was there for every element of it, right? Every part along the progress because Taylor and I were living together for 3 years. So it was Hannah's idea when we got engaged. She was like, "So Taylor's our officiant, right?" And I was like, "Yeah, let's do it." So glad that all worked out. And it's crazy to think we both got married same year during a global pandemic, all sorts of crazy stuff going on, but we got through it. And we're on the other side of it.
Got through it.
And I
We made it.
ever want to do that again.
Never. Never. I don't. But I'm glad we did it.
Yes. Agreed. So listen, we're wrapping up. I want to talk one last moment about something I know that you're passionate about. You are passionate about data. You're passionate about analytics. And, what I'm going to ask you might sound dry to most people, but I know it's something you're really interested in, and I think you can kind of shed light on it a little bit. And what I'm talking about is NPS reports, NPS programs that companies stand up, net promoter scores, right? Can you explain what that is? I think a lot of people, it's kind of a buzzword. What the hell is it, and why are you passionate about it?
Yeah, it's a good question. A lot of people do look at me strange when I say that I love this stuff. So it boils down to one, I love consumer research, right? So I love why customers buy things, right? I care about the passion behind people, why their behavior is that way. And Net Promoter Score, for those that don't know, it's a system implemented by most companies that gives you a metric that essentially tells you whether or not someone's happy or not being a customer of your products. That's the idea behind it. Now, the company I work for, there's a guy that I work with. I mean, he's a lot older and more tenured than me, but he founded that metric and that philosophy. And the idea behind it is what I care about the most about. And the reason he founded this philosophy was around how do you enrich a customer's life, right? At the end of the day, sure, profit matters, but when you're running a company, how do you make your customers the most happiest? And how do you get them to talk about your brand in such a positive way that you get free marketing and advertising, right? And I think we can think about this, like Alex is a great example of this. Alex could be, in the net promoter world, we call it a promoter, someone that promotes a product, or a detractor, someone that if you don't like a product, you're going to talk bad about. And yes, for the fans seeing this, they're showing up Malort. Alex is a promoter of Malort, right? Malort does not pay him any money, and he's willing to talk about how great of a product it is. That is the idea around how does Malort enrich Alex's life. And I think when we think about the philosophy behind it, there are a lot of things that go into understanding, but the real basis of it is the golden rule, right? Treat those the way that you want to be treated, right? So when we think about being a company, how do you treat your customers the way that you want to be treated? And we see a lot of companies now fail at this, right? Ron, we were joking in the break, it's like Comcast is a great example of this. They look at it as an incentivized metric, right? And that is something that you look at and go, how do we make our employees gain more money by making an experience better, right? So when we think about a technician going in to install their hardware, it could be a good conversation. They could get it done. From Comcast's point of view, was the hardware installed? Yes or no? That's a good experience. What we don't talk about is, did the technician was he 30 minutes late? Did he track mud into your living room? Did he use your bathroom and not flush? Right?
Mm-hmm.
Those are experiences we don't talk about that the Net Promoter can get into if we start asking our customers the right questions. And I think when we get into loyalty and understanding kind of what happens, how do you enrich your customer? Don't track mud in their house. Don't use their bathroom, right? Things that, like, how do you want to be treated, right? As a customer, you should be treating them the same way.
Right.
And when you boil it down to that philosophy, that's the way that I care.
And a big part of like Net Promoter Score too is that, like, if you rate it on a scale from 1 to 10, there's a lot of work that goes into that. So as much as I might be like, oh, well, it was 6, it was average, right? In some ways, a lot of companies, when looking at Net Promoter Score, that's not something where they're going to go out and promote and say, like, yes, Malort is what you need, put it on your shelf and buy as many bottles as you can. Like Alex and I are, where realistically, we're at a 10, I think. Like, we would go out.
10.
We'd go out.
You're a 10.
And do everything in our power. We're like brand ambassadors, essentially.
That's exactly what we talk about. You're a brand ambassador for free.
And
it's free marketing.
And that's what's kind of an interesting idea, is that to take NPS, you're actually focusing on how are we delivering that experience to make our customers want to be there and enjoy the product versus, okay, are you satisfied, yes or no? It's a very different model, right?
Well, and I think it's interesting too, because your score can be negative, right? It's not just a 0 to 10 scale in the traditional sense, because you can actually be a detractor, right? You can still be a customer, but you are being negative towards the company, and in fact, you could be a hindrance even if you are a customer. And I do think it is interesting talking about, like, I'm someone who in my own life, I love to be passionate about companies that I'm a customer of, right? Like, that I'm such a sucker for loyalty programs, as both of you know, and I become a champion of those companies. Yep. And it's amazing how many companies, I think, fail to do the basics. Just very simple, the basics. And one thing that I laugh about all the time, we talked about Jake's earlier, my favorite bar in the world. And one of the things Jake's bar does tremendously well is they sell T-shirts for $4 or 3 for $10. And their whole point is they're not trying to make a profit on a T-shirt. They're a bar. They're not a T-shirt company, right? And so you buy their shirts, you wear them proudly, you wear them around. I don't know how many times I've been to a restaurant or a bar and I go, hey, do you sell a T-shirt? And they go, oh, yeah, it's $30. I go, why am I going to spend $30 to give you free advertising, right? Like, by me wearing apparel in your name, I'm supporting you. Shouldn't you make that as easy and as accessible as possible?
Yeah, I mean, Jake's is a perfect example. Jake's knows their customers. It's college students. And what do they deliver? They deliver cheap beer that's accessible. No other bar in Westchester does that, right? To the degree of Jake's. And so you create so many people who are promoters, and all of a sudden you're then willing to, because you know that you're doing that, let's sell cheap T-shirts so that Alex, when he travels to, Thailand and he's wearing his Jake's bar T-shirt, he's proudly, look at Westchester, Pennsylvania in Thailand. It is a concept that at the core is what they call a good profit, right? How Jake's can accomplish that is incredible. A bad profit is like when Enterprise or Hertz, when you return your car with not enough gas and they charge you 4 times the amount. They're making money, but they're kind of giving you a bad experience. It's like, oh, well, what if I couldn't fill it up, right? As a customer, you've just made me a detractor because I'm paying more money, but you're making more money. So it's how do you enrich customers' lives, but not having to give them a bad experience. And a lot of companies fail at that.
Well, I think,
and there's a lot of cool stories out there.
I think a lot of that has to do with thinking short-term profits versus long-term.
Right.
Like,
that's exactly what it is.
You say, well, we can charge people up the ass for a car rental for the gas in the short term. We made a profit. But the likelihood that
Yeah.
person's going to come back to you, knowing and remembering that, oh my God, I had a $100 charge on my credit card after I returned the car. Like, screw those guys. I'm not going to Enterprise anymore.
Yeah.
For the record, I'm an Enterprise guy. But like the point is, like, how do you actually take care of your customers so they will come back? A lifetime customer is worth so much more than a one-time gouge.
100%. And that's the idea about it, is like, how likely are you to recommend a family or friend to X brand? And if you can get someone to say, I'm willing to recommend that. When I think of Alex and he recommends a brand, I know that he cares about what I think about that brand because he made that recommendation, right? He is someone that's loyal to that brand, that's willing to put his skin in the game for that. And so when you break the Net Promoter Score down to that core, to that philosophy, how do you enrich people's lives? And how do you treat people the way that you want to be treated? And how do you make customers' lives happier? Not by profit, but by their experience. And if you can look at it from a brand perspective in that way, you're going to love customer research. That's what I do. And that's why I love it.
Let me ask you one last question about NPS, because I've only ever worked in my career. I've only ever worked for B2B businesses, and we've leveraged NPS. I imagine NPS for B2C is got to be very different. Can you talk about that?
Not really. I mean, it's the same question, right? How much are you willing to recommend this product or service to someone? I mean, the NPS program fits. I mean, one of the longest standing NPS programs is actually Intuit, which is a B2B. They have a certain B2B aspect of it, but their NPS program was actually in their B2B department, in kind of leveraging their software for other companies. And it was that way. How do we survey our customer base to make sure that their experience is happy and taken care of, to a way that makes the employees feel like there's a purpose toward working toward that mission. So I think, like, when you think about it, it's whether you're a customer in the B2C world or a customer in the B2B world, you're still willing to make those recommendations at a level of whether it's professionalism or not. That's where the NPS comes in, right? So are you willing to recommend this as a program to someone else in your world of work? Yes or no? And if it's a no, then you're probably a detractor and you're going to fall into that survey category for whatever program you're using. But it does work just as well.
I love it. Listen, Taylor, this has been an awesome way for us to kick off season 2 with our first guest, testing out this new software. A pleasure as always. We appreciate your insights, and we appreciate you as a listener as well. So thank you again for coming on. I hope this was enjoyable for you. It was for us.
Oh, it was awesome. It was good to see you guys. Good to just have a conversation.
Yeah,
absolutely.
I love that.
All right. Well,
thank you so much.
Thank you very much, everyone. We will see everybody on the next episode, and we'll also see who wins the Super Bowl. Taylor, again, predicted the Buccaneers. We'll see.